Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, the Hump Day edition, Wednesday edition of the big radio show. Thanks for coming in and being part of it with us today. We've got a jam-packed show today, starting off here in hour one with David Boyle, who is an education advocate and a writer for MustRead Alaska. He's got several pieces up there, most recently talking about the education debacle here in the state, especially when it comes to funding and other issues. We're going to talk with him about that here in just a moment with hour one. He's waiting in the wings patiently for us. Then in hour two, we're going to talk about the Homer Peony celebration, the worldwide Homer Peony celebration, and we're going to be discussing some of the components of that with Allison Gaylord, who is with the Alaska Beauty Peony Co-op, which is a farm co-op of multiple peony farmers down here on the Lower Peninsula. We're going to talk with her about what's going on, some of the events that are happening, what it means, and talk a little bit about peonies in general and just some fun stuff. And then we'll probably finish off with some of my thoughts on some of the other things that are going on as well. So a big day today on this beautiful Wednesday. Although I will note, my wife looked at me yesterday, David Ford said, you know how much daylight we're losing? 20 minutes this week. I'm like, what? She's like, 20 minutes. And she's right, because what have I been saying the last few days? Every time I get up and I go get my water and look out over the mountains, I've been seeing the sun. Well, this morning I got up and the sky was clear, but there was no sun on the horizon. It was just barely starting to peak. It was, yep, it's getting darker. Sorry about that. Anyway, we're here. We're coming into the end of July, getting ready to jump into August, and I guess we're ready to tackle it. We're ready to tackle it here. All right. Well, let's get things rocking and rolling. Again, David Boyle, our guest this morning here on the big radio program, and he joins us. Education is the topic du jour. Let's get into it and get things started. Good morning, David. How are you, my friend?
Hey, good morning, Michael. I'm doing great. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you for taking the time out. I know you're traveling and you got a lot of things going on. So, but I appreciate you taking the time to do it with us here.
No problem. If I'd have known we were losing 20 minutes of daylight this week, I might have just stayed in bed.
Well, yeah, I was thinking about it. I seriously considered it this morning. I was thinking, they don't really need me out there, do they? They don't really need me.
Yeah, but what a gorgeous summer.
Oh, it has been a beautiful summer. I mean, even up in Fairbanks with the smoke, I know that people have been complaining a little bit, but at the same time, at least it's not snowing. That's the only thing I can say right now. At least it's not snowing. But yeah, no, it's been a beautiful, beautiful summer. Going way too quick. I will say that. Way too quick. David, I want to dive down into your latest piece and kind of culminate with some of the last couple pieces that you've written. I also want to talk a little bit about this new lawsuit that has just popped up that the Anchorage School District, the Fairbanks School District, and the Cuspic School District have all joined together on the federal funding. We'll talk about that. And of course the superintendent's letter from Anchorage and everything. So I want to get started on it, but let's dive into it first here with this article that you've written here just the other day, where we were you basically, the headline reads, "The more we spend, the less we get in Alaska's public schools run by the education cartel." And that's what, we've been talking about, the education industrial complex, the education cartel. I mean, this is kind of the verbiage that we're using, because we're seeing a lot of those kind of moves and this kind of power being exerted by certain entities. I want to talk a little bit about that component of it, but give me the premise here of the article. What sparked this article, and then we can get down into the details of it.
Thanks, Michael, for having me on. First, I want to say that both my wife and I, we write for MustRead Alaska pro bono. We do it because we believe in what we're doing, and that people need to be informed on what's going on both in the nation and particularly in the state of Alaska. My objective in this article was to identify some of the lowest performing schools in the Anchorage School District and relate them to Senate school districts, and to show that the more you spend does not relate to improvement student achievement. So I've taken some of the worst, by the way, the worst schools in the Anchorage School District are on the northeast side. There are several reasons for this, I believe. So the senators that represent the northeast side of Anchorage are Senators Loki Tobin, Bill Wilikowski, and Senator Dunbar. So I've taken them and I've identified the schools in their district. This took me about 3 days to do, because if you take the redistricting of the redistricting for the state senate and the representatives, the boundaries are not real clear. It's just the fringes or the borders of the districts are clear. So it's hard to find out what schools are inside of that district. And then I took the Anchorage School District's map, which is very good, and shows each individual K-12 school within the district. And you can actually magnify, go down, drill down into it and see what streets they're on, et cetera, et cetera. So it was kind of difficult to find out if there was a street in Senator Wilikowski's district or was it in Senator Dunbar's district.
Right.
I think I've got them all right. And so I made a chart. These three state senators, by the way, they believe more dollars is going to help a kid learn how to read, but there's no real data to prove that. And if we
I think, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that we need to point out that these three senators not only believe that more money are going to solve the problem, but these are the three most vocal senators as far as taking a stance against any policy changes until they get their funds. That's their answer. We're not going to change anything until we get our funding. That's been their vociferous charge on this.
And they're not going to change anything, even if they get more funding, because, as you know, in the recent bill that passed, they're going to have a K-12 education task force, and they're going to study the problems and the issues for 2 years and then come to a conclusion. It's kind of like, well, why are you doing it after you put the money out there? It seems like you're putting a Band-Aid on something that probably won't work, and the wound will just fester some more. By the way, if you remember, back in 2014, there was a task force put together. Lynn Gaddis was on it. Tammy Wilson was on it. David Neese. I believe Brad Keithley was on it as well, but I'm not positive. It's so long ago. They went out and studied rural districts, urban districts, and they came up with a report identifying the problems and possible solutions. Nowhere can you find that report. It's called the House Sustainable Education Task Force. I've asked Mr. Neese if he can find it. He can't find it. The only thing I've seen is a one-page summary, and that's it. But there are no detailed facts in it. So I believe maybe this new task force that's going to go for 2 years, how many kids are not going to be able to read during that time or do math at their grade levels? That's my big question. We're failing these kids while we quit do another study and probably a white paper and stick it on a shelf somewhere. But you're right. These 3 state senators are the most vocal, especially, I believe, Senator Giesel, the majority leader in the Senate. She's just turned 180 degrees, and she just puts out the NEA talking points, and so do Senator Wielechowski and, of course, Dunbar. But some will say that low-income and hungry kids are the root cause of the problem. And I have to throw the BS flag on that, because what they're actually saying is, in these Northeast schools in Anchorage, poor kids can't read. And that's been shown to be false. Actually, I just saw an article this morning. Remember the Houston Independent School District, not the one in Alaska, but the one in Texas, that
right.
The Anchorage School District Superintendent Bryant left when it was really failing the students down there. About 2 years ago, it was taken over by the state of Texas. You ought to see the increase in student achievement. He put some structure in place, new curriculum, and it's amazing. They're actually, in some cases, surpassing the average of the state, the rest of the schools in the state of Texas, as far as reading achievement goes. So it can be done. A lot of minority students and low-income students in the Houston, Texas Independent School District. And that can be done here too. And I'm very excited to watch what's happening and going to happen with the Alaska Reads Act results in the Northeast schools in the Anchorage School District,
Right.
the lowest socioeconomic district or area in the Anchorage School District.
We've seen this play out. We know that Mississippi has some of the lowest income earners in the country. I mean, it is a state that has a huge poverty component, and yet they spend a fraction of what many states are, and they have jumped multiple positions from down near the bottom to somewhere up in the middle upper of the pack as far as scholastic achievement, simply through policy changes, not throwing a gob of money at the problem, but simply through policy changes in what they're doing.
Education reform. I mean, if you look at Mississippi, Alabama, even Louisiana today, as far as reading goes, they've all implemented reading reform, and some of them are going to in Tennessee, they're going to implement math reform, curriculum reform. You know, it's really, to me, disgusting what's happened to the children in this nation as far as reading goes. We get these high-level researchers from like the University of Chicago that gave Anchorage the everyday math, which is high-level math that meant for kids who are going to college, and other kids can't really use it. But what they've done is, years ago, I think it was probably in the 70s, they implemented the whole language concept. In other words, for reading. In other words, they kicked phonics out, which most of us were using when we were kids. So they kicked phonics out, and they believe the whole word concept was the way to go. And that's what we've been using for decades now in Alaska. So a kid recognizes the word and memorizes the word, and that's how they learn to read. You know, like the word "the," which is pretty easy. But when you get to more complicated words, it's much more difficult to decode and actually learn how to read. And if you can't learn how to read, you're going to have serious troubles, and you're probably going to drop out by the time you get to middle school. And that's what we're seeing. So
yeah. Recognizing and remembering the word Constantinople is probably not in the, auspicious or perspicacious or something. I mean, these kids are going to have a hard time with it if they can't spell the word out, because they don't understand phonics and the basic breakdown of each one of the phonemes. I mean, it's going to be a troubling thing. And you actually point that out, that one of the districts that actually is doing well in, I think it was Senator Wielechowski's district, is actually a special case in that situation, because that school is using both Saxon math and a phonics program, unlike most of the other schools in Anchorage, and they are doing well because they went back to basic Saxon math and phonics.
Yes, that's the Northern Lights ABC school, which is back to basic school. I've been in that school a few years ago, and it's just interesting. The kids, there's a lot of structure in the school, plus the curriculum is fantastic and it works. So you watch the kids go from one class to the other or down the hall to the lunchroom or whatever, and they're actually marching in a line. It's not a mass of kids walking in the hallway, and the teacher's leading them and maybe a teacher's aide behind. But yeah, those kids, their reading achievement on the Alaska STAR test, the standardized test, overall for all the grades 1 through 6, the reading achievement, 59% of the kids read at grade level. And in math, 55% are proficient at grade level. And the other interesting thing about it is, guess what? They're one of the lowest cost schools in the Anchorage School District, a little over $15,000. So, and that's in Senator Dunbar's district.
Yeah.
And I actually had a former school or a school board member call me up years ago. Her children were entering elementary school, and they asked me, David, they said, if you had to put your kids in an elementary school in the Anchorage School District, where would you put them? And I said, well, there's 2 schools I would pick: Northern Lights ABC School and Aquarian Charter School. Both those schools excel. And by the way, Aquarian Charter School is similar to Northern Lights. They don't have, let's say, the structure, but they do have Saxon math, which is the math, foundational math you and I learned with flashcards. The times tables, most schools don't even teach the times tables today. How the heck are you going to know how to do, let's say, algebra?
Yeah, how are you going to make that work if you can't memorize simple things like that? We're talking with David Boyle, senior contributor for MustRead Alaska. We're up against the first break. We're going to continue here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We're talking about his latest article in MustRead Alaska, which I have posted now up into the chat room. If you want to come on board and join us there at facebook.com/Michael Duke Show/live. We'll continue with David Boyle in just a moment. Back with more common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We'll return in just a moment.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, David Boyle is our guest here on the program. I see Alexi Moore is in the chat room. Hello, Alexi. I need to, she says, new curriculums and phonics across the state. New curriculum would be costly, but it's a need. I agree. We need, and the new curriculum is actually the old curriculum. We should go back to some of the old curriculums. That's what we should do. Dust them off. Alexi also would like to have you on the program next week. If you have time to come in and talk about the session and the special session, we'd love to have you on the program next week. So be on the lookout for a text message or a message from me to talk with you. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't also talk about another component of this, David. Another component of the problem with education today is parental involvement. I think the lack of parental involvement in some cases is a huge thing. Where you see the most parental engagement in homeschooling, in charter schools, and things like that, you see that's a key to that success. In your mind, how do we spark more of that parental involvement and get the parents up, to stop treating the school system as if it's a babysitter, and more engaged in their kids' education? How do we do that?
Well, that's a difficult one to answer. First of all, we have to inform the parents how well or how poorly their kids are doing in their schools. When you drive by, let's say, Begich Middle School in Anchorage, it is the Taj Mahal of Taj Mahals, and it's kind of like, to me, like one of the old westerns where you see the storefront facades and there's nothing behind them. So when a parent sees a beautiful school, they kind of believe that there's actually some learning going on inside the walls of that school. And they're fooling this is a thing across the country they're doing. They're building beautiful schools in every state and every school district. And I've seen them. And it's like, you're fooling the parents into thinking that just because it really looks good, there's not much going on. But then you look at Aquarian Charter School. Aquarian Charter School was the old Northern Lights ABC school that the school district gave back to the municipality years ago. And the charter school decided, well, we'll take that. And then guess what? The district said, oh, we're going to take that real property back and put it into our portfolio. And then you look at Eagle Academy out in Eagle River, Eagle Academy Charter School. The highest performing school in the Anchorage School District is in an old roller rink. And the facility doesn't mean a hill of beans for the most part. I went to a one-room schoolhouse, 26 kids, one teacher, 8 grades. When I went into the big city school, I was at least 6 months ahead of every student in every class. And I was so far ahead, I thought I was behind. But and guess what? The parents involved in that little one-room school, you didn't mess around with the teacher. You behaved because you had a note you took home, and guess what? You found out what happened after that. And once the parent knows, a lot of parents don't know how well or poorly their kids are doing at school because maybe the school doesn't want them to know. So once you inform a parent how poorly their kids are doing, many of them will get involved. About a few years back, a friend of mine and I stood outside of Mountain View Elementary School and William Tyson Elementary School during registration period. And that was during the No Child Left Behind era, which was a very good bill because it had accountability built into it. We had a packet of information that said, here's how poorly your school is doing. And they were 2 of the worst schools in the Anchorage School District back then. And it was a report card. And then we had a copy of the federal law, basically that portion that said you can get your kid out of a failing school. If a school fails a child for 3 years in a row, you are allowed to get that kid out of that school into a better neighborhood school, and you get free transportation. So the Anchorage, we talked to 21 parents. It was the last day of registration. 21 parents. Of those 21.
Hold on, Dave. We're about to rejoin. Hold on.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
All right. Our guest is David Boyle, senior contributor for MustRead Alaska, education advocate and writer. I just asked the question during the break because I think one of the things that we have a tendency to skip over is that there is some direct parental responsibility in this education fiasco when it comes to education. There are many parents rather who are treating the education system as if it's a glorified babysitter. And I asked David the question, how do we get more engagement? And, especially since we can see that the ultimate form of engagement is homeschooling. That's direct one-on-one engagement, or charter schools where the parents are required to participate and be part of the structure and management of the school, et cetera, et cetera. And you were telling us a story about how back in the day you stood out in front of 2 schools who were the lowest performing schools in the community, and we're telling people about how poorly these 2 schools were doing, and you were trying to educate the parents. Walk us through that.
So a friend of mine and I, a few years back, we stood outside of 2 elementary schools, the lowest performing schools in the Anchorage School District. William Tyson, which is on the northeast side, and Mountain View, which is, of course, on the northeast side as well. In those days, No Child Left Behind would actually required the district to notify a parent if their school their child was enrolled in was failing 3 years in a row. And then the district had to provide transportation to a better neighborhood school. By the way, my wife worked for the VA, and she had a doctor friend over there that got the letter from the Anchorage School District. It was like 2 pages long. And man, I've never seen so much bureaucratic gobbledygook. This lady was a physician and very intelligent lady. Her daughter was in one of these schools that failed 3 years in a row. So she got the letter from the Anchorage School District. She could not comprehend what the letter said. I read it too. It was unbelievable. So they don't want parents to know. Let's put it that way. They want to confuse them and distract them. So my friend and I, we talked to about 21 of the parents as they were coming out of registering their kids in these failing schools. We had a packet of information consisted of the scores in reading and math for these particular schools by grade. And we had a copy of the portion of the No Child Left Behind Act that allowed them, or required the district to get their kids to a better school. And then we had an application from the district in which the parents could say, I want my child to get out of this school into a better neighborhood school. Of the 21 parents we talked to, 17 of those parents got their kids out of those 2 failing schools. It's not a large sample. We got there about the hour before registration closed on the last day. But that shows you, if a parent knows how poorly their kids are being educated in the specific school, they will take action to get their child to a better neighborhood school even. And the district did provide transportation, which for most of them, by the way, was the biggest problem.
Right.
Because both parents worked or they were single parents. Yeah. And that's the same problem we have today, Michael, with charter schools. The schools get funding for every student in the district, including charter school students, but most of them do not provide, including Anchorage, do not provide transportation for those students. So you're on your own.
Right.
And so once parents know how poorly their kids are being taught in a particular school, I believe they will take action. There has always been and always will be a certain percentage of parents that are just never going to be involved in their child's education. And we saw it when we were kids as well. And today, try to get into an Anchorage school because they've increased security dramatically. And I understand why. A parent, you have to make an appointment to get into the school to talk to your teacher.
Right. David Boyle is our guest. David, let's go back to your article. So the premise of the article was you have three senators, Wielechowski, Dunbar, and Tobin, who are all very vocal about not changing policy. That's the answer to every question is simply more money. And you broke down what the cost was in their districts on a per student cost and the actual results that they were getting in those costs. So let's break this down and talk about it.
Okay, so I looked at Senator Tobin's district, and she is probably the most vocal supporter of more funding without education reform. She used to be the chief of staff for Senator Tom Begich in the legislature. So the schools I just mentioned, like Mountain View, only 11% of their kids read at grade level, but we're paying over $23,000 for each one of those kids. And what I did is I said, well, let's look at a classroom of 25 students in Mountain View. How much does that cost? Just a little under $600,000 for that classroom.
Right.
And then we'll go, and William Tyson's even worse. Only 10% of their kids are proficient in reading. So you have to ask, what's going on inside those classrooms? These are low incomes, for the most part, low socioeconomic students, a lot of minority students, and that might be a problem too with language. But William Tyson, it's almost same as Mountain View, just about $23,000 per student. So we're getting very low results with a lot of money. On the other hand, let's look at the two schools, elementary schools on J-Bear, Elmendorf and Richardson. They're the lowest cost per student in Senator Tobin's district, a little over $13,000 per student. That's $10,000 less than the two schools I just mentioned.
Right.
23,000 for Mountain View, 13,000 for Aurora and Orion schools. But look at the results. Aurora schools, 55% of the students read at grade level. It doesn't sound good, but it's the highest in her district, and it's one of the highest in the Anchorage School District as well. And 49% are proficient in math. And you look at Orion, the other elementary school in Jay-Bear, pretty close to Aurora Elementary School. 45% of the kids are proficient in reading. So there's something going on here. It appears as if we're getting better results with less money.
I was just going to say, it looks like it's the inverse here, because as you look at these charts, you see that the ones that have the lowest amount of money on a per student cost are the ones that are doing the best. And so you got to ask the question, what is going on here? That holds true even down into Senator Dunbar's district. Northern Lights ABC Schools has a less by almost $10,000, and it is the lowest cost almost of the entire of his entire district, and yet it's got some of the highest reading proficiencies in the entire district. So that's the question: is it really a money problem?
No, I don't believe it's a money problem. How much money can you throw into a classroom and expect better results? If you're a high-performing classroom, let's say, you could throw more money at it, but you're probably not going to improve the results significantly. If it's a lower-performing classroom, it appears as if by the data we have that you're not going to get any improvement. You look at Nunaka Valley. I could not believe it. Let's see whose district that's in. Nunaka Valley is in
Willikowski.
Is it Willikowski's?
Yeah.
Yeah, Willikowski's did. Yeah. $32,000 per student. They might have a lot of some intensive needs students in that school. I'm not positive, but that is way out of whack. That's when you compare the two schools on Jay-Bear at 13,000, and this is 32,000 per student, and the results. Only 30% of their kids on the average are proficient in reading, and fewer than that are proficient in math. So once again, it looks like we're not getting a lot of return on our investment. There's an inverse relationship. So maybe if we cut the funding, we'll get better results.
Well, and you don't have to go too far. Even inside Willikowski's same district is Scenic Park Elementary, which is less than half of Nunaka, 15,000, and they're getting substantially higher results, 42% reading, 55% math, which somebody just pointed out in the chat room. Well, that would still be a failing grade, 42% out of 100. But I mean, I guess we're rounding on a curve here, but when you're 52 to 55%, 42 to 55% is still the highest end of the bell curve. That's kind of troubling in and of itself. But the fact that they're doing it with half the money, makes you ask questions. Now, maybe there is special needs, maybe there's some other things in there, but it's obvious, according, from the charts that you've laid out here, that more money does not always equal. In fact, the highest amount of monies are always in places which seems to have the lowest amount of actual outcomes.
Right. And if, for the individual that said that, only 42% are proficient in reading in Scenic Park Elementary School, well, across the entire Anchorage School District, it's about 30 to 32% are proficient in reading. So everything's relative in this. We have kind of a bell-shaped curve. I think it's skewed a bit to the lower end in Anchorage, but it's all relative. You look at, Northern Lights ABC School up at like 55% proficient in reading, and they're doing a great job, as is Aquarian Elementary School. And there's parent involvement in those. And I was going to say, I think there's a cultural issue going on here. And I've seen a lot of data in the state. It's like, does a parent put a lot of importance on their kids' education? Are they involved? And that's part of the culture. So, and there are other problems, like, so if you look at Jay-Bear, there's one culture there on the basis, Elmendorf and Fort Rich, their parents are involved and they're engaged in their child's education. And these parents move every 3 to 5 years, so they're in different schools and they know what's going on and what to expect. When we moved to Anchorage in Alaska in '96, I didn't know what a charter school was. Fortunately, I didn't know, because I wouldn't be able to get my child into a charter school.
Right, because it's not available to you, right? Because
Yeah.
it's lottery based, or it's limited, and they don't want to build anymore. And the worst part of this whole thing, David, right before we go to break here, but the worst part of this whole thing is that we've seen the successes of the charter schools and some of these other things, and yet they don't want to use it as a template for other schools. That's what I don't understand. If you've had consistent success with a specific model, why wouldn't you take that model and utilize it in your underperforming schools? They don't want to change they don't want to change the way that they do business, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, if you had a bunch of fast food franchises, let's say you had 10 of them, and 2 of them were doing really well, you'd have to figure out, well, why are they doing so well? And 2 of them should be closed because you're losing money on them. You'd close those 2, and you'd modify and say, let's look at the best business model these other 2 are doing and what they're doing right, and let's replicate it in the lowest performing. There's just a lot of resistance. Another issue is, if you're a teacher and you've been in the district for, let's say, 10 years, you get to choose pretty much the school you want to teach in. And you're probably going to want to teach in a school where the parents are, quote, involved, the students are doing pretty well. When we lived on the south side of Anchorage, which the better performing neighborhood schools are, they opened up Golden View Middle School. Beautiful school. And one of my kids was enrolled in that school. We went to the first day of the open house, and the principal stood up in front of all the parents. The gym was filled. And she said, "Your kids are very lucky. I was able to pick the best teachers in the district to be in this school." Now, I'm sorry, that's bad leadership up front, up the top. And that's bad management up to the top. You don't let the best teachers go to certain schools. Meanwhile, the northeast side of Anchorage might get the worst school teachers, which I'm not sure of, or the mediocre teachers. You have to spread your talent.
David Boyle is our guest. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We continue with more in just a moment.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
David Boyle is our guest as we go through this here and keep going on this. I want to shift gears a little bit here, David, when we come back and talk a little bit about the lawsuits and the loss of federal funding, and Superintendent Bryant's letters to the public about this, where he's going to take a stand and he's going to fight against the morass of low expectations or whatever else that he's going to be doing here. I want to talk a little bit about that, and we'll see what that comes down to. But overall, is this just simply a problem of? I mean, you mentioned that it's poor leadership at the top. I think we could probably all agree that at this point, we know that leadership is a huge component of any of these organizations, and since we don't appear to have really great leadership, it's problematic. Am I right?
Yeah, you can't lead from behind. Leadership sets the agenda. Well, the school board sets the agenda, and the leader has to implement that agenda. So I would put a lot of the responsibility for the failures in the Anchorage School District, at least, on the school board members. except for Mr. Donnelly. He seems to be the only outlier there. And you compare that to what's happening in the Mat-Su School District. The Mat-Su School District is doing very well at a much lower cost than the Anchorage School District. So I'd put the onus actually on the school board members. The superintendent implements the policies of the school board. But I think he also advises the school board on certain policies like, let's say, DEI. Restorative justice is another one they brought into the Anchorage School District. By the way, both DEI and restorative justice have been negated by the President Trump's executive orders, but the Anchorage School District apparently doesn't want to listen to the president on things like that. So they may actually really jeopardize their funding when in that area. So anyway, it is about leadership. Lead from the front, not from behind. And I watched the school board meetings, and they won't even allow discussion from Mr. Donnelly, who's asked to reduce the funding in the DEI department. He's asked to reduce funding in other areas. He won't even get a second on his motions, so they're not even up for discussion or debate, and that's what they do there. By the way, my next project, which I've been working on for about 4 days now, I'm doging the Anchorage School District. I'm going through their entire 474-page budget and I'm going to find some money that they can fill their $4.3 million budget hole with, showing that they really don't need any more funding from the legislature.
Well, you make a valid point when they basically take a stand and thumb their nose at the executive orders and directives from the federal government saying do this or jeopardize your federal funding. And yet at the same time, the irony of that is that they're now in a lawsuit to release some of the federal funding because they're struggling just with one component. And this new thing has nothing to do with DEI. This is about some of the federal grants that they're looking at. But what happens if they lose that other chunk? I mean, what happens if they lose the money that's under the DEI banner? That's another big chunk of money there as well. That's even bigger than the $14 million that's being withheld in this grant program.
Well, I'm looking at a chart here in their fiscal year 26 budget. And in that fiscal year, the federal revenue stream that they get per student federal revenue is $408. Doesn't sound like a lot, but multiply that times 42,000 students. And by the way, they're looking at declining enrollment in next school year as well. They're going to be down to about 38,000 plus, not counting 2,000 correspondence students. But their costs keep going up. There's another inverse relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, again, there's a holistic problem. There's not a one-shot fix for anything here. We need to go back to the curriculums. We need more parental involvement. We need tougher leadership at the school board levels, at the superintendent levels. There's not just one quick fix. It's all these different things coming together, but people are starting to understand that. And they're starting to, I think that's why you're seeing this outflow, this migration from the school districts and the brick and mortar standard schools to alternative programs, because people are getting sick and tired of what they're getting and the answers they're getting there.
No, you're exactly right. I'm looking here at the
hold on before you respond to that. I made the mistake of not telling you we're about to rejoin here. So here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
All right, David Boyle is our guest. Right before we came back here, I was just saying that this is not a one-size-fits-all problem, that there are multiple facets of this. Obviously, parental involvement, better curriculum, going back to what really worked. better leadership at both the school board levels and at the administrative levels, and a true accounting for what's going on. And I think we're already seeing the results of them not addressing this issue, which is the decline in enrollment. There is some outmigration in the state, but what we're seeing now doesn't have to do with the outmigration of people actually leaving the state. We're seeing bodies leaving the school district while remaining in the state and going to alternative education systems, whether that's homeschooling, correspondence schools, allotments, charters, learning pods, teacher shares. This is happening. It's a huge outflow of students from the system. 7,000 in the last 12 years in the Anchorage district alone. I mean, that's a big number. And I think it's because people are just finally so fed up with the infighting and everything else and the posturing that they've just decided, well, we'll just do it on our own.
Well, you're right, Michael. And that's one good thing. People still have the ability to choose some of the better public education systems that are available. Maybe some of the folks in the legislature need to pass a law that would restrict parents from doing that. That wouldn't surprise me. Require their kids to go to a neighborhood school, whether it's failing or successful. But an example of that would be a family partnership charter school. I think 2 years ago, that was they had more students in that school than any other one in the Anchorage School District. It was a little over 1,700, and they had a wait list. So because of their quote board at last, their policy committee, which is the board that runs the charter school, it was dysfunctional according to the Anchorage School District, and the superintendent was pushing to get rid of their charter and not renew it, and that's exactly what happened. They didn't renew the charter. They turned it into a correspondence school, which is very interesting because now the district lost more money because, as you know, a correspondence student only gets 90% of the BSA versus going through the actual compounding formula a regular neighborhood school student does. So Family Partnership School lost over 700 students in 1 year. And they went to Correspondence Idea, Raven, and the Matsu. And that's good. That's competition. And that's what we need. We need competition in the entire K-12 education system. And, that was good to see. And actually, parents in the Family Partnership Charter School were involved in their kids' education because it was a charter school. And they saw what was happening and they said, I don't have anything to do with this. I'm going to remove my student and put him somewhere else that's a better education fit, which is kind of nice to see because parents are involved. And guess what? They find out what else is available and they choose that best fit for their kid. Yeah. I'm looking at, we're talking about the lawsuit, the federal government.
So this lawsuit now that's just been filed as of Monday has got the Anchorage School District, the Fairbanks School District, which I hear it was either $125,000 or $250,000 into a kitty to run this lawsuit, and the Cuspic School District. All three of them are now suing the federal government and the Trump administration over the release of these funds. And here we are. I mean, my question is, how much BSA money is being sucked up to try and fight back over these funds? It's $14 million for the Anchorage School District. I think it was $5 million for the Fairbanks, no, $2.5 million for the Fairbanks School District and $180,000 for the Cuspic School District. I mean, how much public money are they going to use to then try and claw back more public money?
Well, yeah, I'm not so sure about that number for the Anchorage School District because I'm looking at their budget here. And last year, the school district got $24,710, $24,710,000 from federal revenue. 18,000 of that was from federal impact aid. In 26, they go way down from 24 million to 17 million they project they'll have from the federal government. That includes 15.5 million for impact aid, ROTC instructor reimbursement, which I understand. And they also get money, believe it or not, for Medicaid reimbursement, $750,000. The impact aid, I think we all know what that is. Well, they may not. Impact aid is what the federal government gives in lieu of payment in lieu of taxes to the school district. This is for parents who live on J-Bear and whose kids go to the public school system. My feelings about the impact aid is, let's not give it to the district. Let's give it to the parents that live on those bases and let them pick and choose if they want to send their kid to the Anchorage School District, they want to send them to a private school, etc. I'd love to see that happen up in the Washington, D.C.
Yeah, ADN is reporting that the Anchorage School District lost access to nearly $12 million, according to their own lawsuit. The Fairbanks School Board, $2.5 million, and the Cuspic, $180,000. I mean, it's a significant amount of money, obviously. But I mean, part of this problem, and I think part of the problem in the Anchorage School District specifically, was their behavior with the COVID funds, because they decided to use COVID funds for reoccurring costs instead of one-time funding, as they'd been directed to. In fact, Jared Bryant was quoted in the paper as saying, "District like ours cannot plan responsibly or meet our obligations when longstanding federal commitments are withheld without warning. We're taking legal action to protect our students, honor the promises made to our communities, and restore stability to every school, that every school system needs." So I think, again, it goes back to what were they using as reoccurring funds and what were they using as one-time funds.
So here's the data on that, Michael. For the COVID funds in fiscal year 24 in the Anchorage School District, they used $75 million of COVID money to pay for 530 positions. 530. 497 of those positions were teachers. And guess what? They didn't get it next year, so they got to find some money to backfill that.
Well,
and
then
that's part of their budget hole.
Yeah, well, then we go back to the whole idea of cutting positions versus actually cutting people, and what are they selling to people? They keep saying, "Oh, we're cutting positions. We're cutting 400 positions," and then they ascribe that, "Oh, that means that there's going to be fewer teachers in the class," when they're actually just empty positions. They're not actually filled with people. Turns out that they had to cut less than 100 people when it was all said and done. It's infuriating. All right. Well, David, I look forward to your next article on MustRead. Thank you for coming on board. We appreciate it. We look forward to having you again here in the near future.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. And I look forward to Doge and the ASD.
Yep. Hold on. All right. David, thank you for coming on board. I mean, to me, this was an interesting, there's a lot of back of the napkin math going on in this article, as far as, like you said, it was hard to try and suss out some of these numbers and figure out where the lines were drawn and who was in what school and et cetera, et cetera. But it, again, just shows me that what we're seeing, the one thing that sticks out glaringly to me in this article, which, again, I'll post up in the chat room if you want to go look at it, is the fact that the places where you're spending the most money have the lowest proficiency. And the inverse to that is the places that are spending the least amount of money seem to have the highest proficiency. And that should, if nothing else, whether the numbers you're providing here are 100% accurate or not, would be to start asking some questions like, what is the difference? What is going on? What is the modeling that's being used to teach these kids that are doing well versus everything else? It's a frustrating thing. I'll give you the final thoughts here.
You're exactly right. And like I said, I tried to show that there's very little relationship to the amount of money you spend versus the results you get. And all the numbers I got from the Department of Education, they're easy to get if you just go there and put in the Compass report for schools. And I'm just trying to point out to those three senators, you can't improve education unless you have education reform like the Alaska Reads Act. We're seeing the results of that, and we've seen it in other. Let's replicate what other states are doing. Let's not reinvent the wheel, and let's not do it the Alaska way. Let's just do it the right way. So it's all about the kids. It's not about the system. It's not about the bureaucracy and the infrastructure. close some schools. We don't need them. And just do your job and lead.
Well, and again, it seems like the leadership that this is, the leadership's problem is that this is not about the kids, that this is about the funding, that this is about the machine, that this is about the employees, that this is more about keeping the status quo rather than actually educating the kids and getting better proficiency results in the end, which is the biggest problem that we're having right now, is the proficiencies in the toilet. You'd think that would be the first thing on the lips of everything. It's a it's a huge problem.
Yeah, and I really have some sympathy for the excellent and good classroom teachers that we have. They're not getting recognized because all of them are the same. And they should be recognized, and they should be recognized by bonus pay and merit pay as well. Pay for results, not for seat time as such. So anyway, thank you very much, Michael. I enjoyed it, and I look forward again.
David, thank you so much for coming on board. We appreciate you being part of the show today. Thank you for coming in and being part of it. All right, that brings us to the top of the hour here, and we're about to come on board with Allison Gaylord. She's going to be joining us here in a few moments and talking with us about the Peony Festival going on down here in Homer. Donna Anderson in the chat room says, parental involvement does not have to be hours a parent volunteers in a classroom. It can be run copies and do prep work. Make sure your child is fed and well rested. Help them with their homework. Model respect and kindness. I was the most successful as a teacher when I included parents in the educational growth of the student. That's it. You're looking for a partner, right? I mean, you're looking for a partnership there. And there is a problem, and I feel bad for teachers when we have parents who are essentially, as I said earlier, treating the education system like it's some kind of glorified babysitter. Jeffrey said something earlier. Where is it? It's right here. He said, I hear a lot about parental involvement. With 2-income households, as parents, we entrust our children to the schools to educate them. Unfortunately, the system is failing the parents and the children. Yeah, but I mean, I think, Jeffrey, there has to be, and I understand it's tough out there. I understand having 2-income households means that there's very little time to do some of those things, but there's a prioritization issue there too, as well. I mean, is it more important to have the nice 4-wheeler in the driveway, or the boat, or the fancy trucks, or whatever? And will you sacrifice your kids on that? That was a decision that we made early on as a married couple, my wife and I, when we decided to be a 1-income household. That was a decision that we made because we wanted Terry to be there with the kids. It means I didn't have all the fancy stuff when the kids were growing up. I didn't have all the toys and the 4-wheelers and the boats and the planes and whatever. I mean, we had what we had. And I think that worked out well for us. So there isn't, but again, you can't just turn them over and entrusting them to educate the children is one thing, but I think it goes beyond just entrusting them to educate. I think what's a lot of parents are doing is they're just entrusting them to, again, basically be a babysitter. We drop them off. They're your problem now. We're going to go do our thing. And when we come back, we'll talk more about it. This is a big problem. And I would love to see more parents involved, as Donna was saying, in all these other areas where it doesn't have to be just hours spent in the classroom. It could be just that involvement of making sure your kid is fed and rested and has the support at home, helping them with their homework, things like that. Anyway, thank you, Donna, for your comment on that. I appreciate it. Okay, we are coming up on the break. We're about to rejoin the radio. I'm waiting for Allison to join us here in just a moment, and we'll get back into it. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's get to it. Here we go. Back with more right after this.
Buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. And of course, live around, on Facebook and YouTube and the whole thing. Anyway, good morning and welcome, my friends, to hour 2 of the big radio show. We are just finishing up. We just finished up with David Boyle, who writes for MustRead Alaska, talking about the education system and how money is not going to solve the problem. If you missed that, you can go back and listen to that discussion on the podcast, which is available wherever you find podcasts, including Spotify. And you can also go back and watch it on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you need to do your things here. We're going to be joined in just a few minutes here by Allison Gaylord, who is the president of the Alaska Beauty Peony Co-op. And that is, of course, a farm co-op of various peony farmers around the Lower Peninsula. And we're going to be talking about the Peony Festival, which is a month-long event down here on the peninsula in Homer, centered around Homer, because Homer is kind of the peony capital of the world. And there's lots of peony farming going on across the state. I know up in Nikiski and in fact, there's a peony farm up in Fairbanks as well. So, I mean, it's a good opportunity to talk about it. It's become a big export here in the United States, or in Alaska to the United States. And we're going to talk about peonies and what is available, what the celebration does, and some of the events that are going on around the community to discuss that as well. In the meanwhile, it is I think pretty obvious that we have got a problem in the country, but in Alaska specifically. In Alaska specifically, we have a problem, and that is this innate dependency on all this federal lucre, all this federal money. I was just looking at the headlines from around the state, and there's story after story. I mean, the first one that we touched on here in the last hour was 3 Alaska school districts join a lawsuit against the Trump administration over federal education funding freeze because they were frozen out of some of this money, this government money that was supposed to come to them. We've got of course, there is a opinion piece in the Beacon from a couple 3 weeks ago, talking about from two members. It's so funny because the one is the president and CEO of Kodiak Electric. The other is the owner of Daylight Energy Systems, which is a renewable energy company that's been living on federal subsidies to put all these programs together. And they've got an argument about why they really need those federal monies, right? We've got an opinion piece that was from Bobby Burgess and Morgan Dulane, again, up in Fairbanks on the Fairbanks School Board, talking about education and how they're talking about how we need more monies from the thing. And then we've got, of course, what was the other one? Let's see, here it is. The state estimates Alaska could lose up to $500 million annually in Medicaid spending because of the budget reconciliation bill. I mean, and then there was another one. Trump administration frees on millions for adult education, prompts layoffs and cuts in Alaska for all these federally funded programs for adult reading and educate. Look, I'm not saying that these are not valid and viable programs. I'm not saying that a lot of these things are not good, but how dependent have we become on the largesse of the federal government that everything that we do is revolving around that? When I talk about the state of Alaska becoming a dependency state, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how we look to Uncle Sugar to do everything for us that we can't or don't want to do for ourselves. Again, an example. Federal funds for education services were among those blocked by the president on July 1st, causing immediate cuts to Alaska adult education and workforce development programs and staff layoffs. Alaska had over $1 million allocated as part of an adult education basic grant, according to the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, which administers the grants. The withheld funds means immediate cuts to services for Alaska adult learners and staff layoffs, according to the grant recipients in the ADN. There's a Fairbanks-based nonprofit that provides adult education programs, including literacy, English language, and general civics. There's another organization provides in-person and virtual instruction and mentoring to adult adult learners in Fairbanks, as well as villages in the interior. Western Alaska, Yukon Flats, etc. There's also a workforce development program called the Pathways Program, serving youth and young adults ages 16 to 24, used to run a bookstore in Fairbanks. We go through these things. Again, I'm not saying that these programs are not important, but if they are important and they're good for the community, why do we continue to have to look to the federal government to fund these things? If these things are prevalent and needed and doing a good job, then the communities should want to step up and support them. Another case, Southeast Regional Resource Center, a nonprofit educational services agency that provides services statewide, including adult education. They're going to lose $86,000 for the programs in Southeast and another $64,000 in the Aleutians. I mean, it's $150,000, but don't you think that in the state, if your program is doing a good job, couldn't you raise that? See, it becomes easy because it's easy money from the federal government, has been easy money. Now things are starting to change. And these are just a few of the different programs that we're talking about. The $500 million in Medicaid spending is going to be interesting, because what's going to happen? Is the state going to have to try and pick that up, or will we be cutting back? We become so dependent on the federal soup that we can't seem to even think about, well, how do we do this on our own? How do we do this on our own? And that, to me, is one of the most discouraging things out there. And I blame, in part, the education system in the United States over the last 40 or 50 years. I saw it when I was growing up. I saw some of the prevalent mindset of teachers and instructors fellow and administrators when I was growing up, where there was an underlying tone of, the answer to every problem is the federal government. They should be there for us. They should be there to take care of us. And that, again, that's part of the problem. This reminds me of the old adage about a government that's big enough to give you everything is also big enough to take everything away. Where is our self-reliance? Where is our ability to say, well, it was nice to get the free money when we could, but now that we can't, how do we do it on our own? Instead of, let's just go sue the federal government to get more, to get it back. You can't take that away from us. We were dependent on that. That's not how it works. We are 36 trillion. That's 36,000 billion, 36,000 million in debt. It's going up by the minute, right? By the second. You go to the national debt clock and you just watch it click away. We are rapidly approaching a point where we will never get out from behind the 8 ball. We will never be able to have a balanced budget because the debt is soaring so fast and so badly, and we don't have any political will to slow it down. That's the biggest issue. And then, for example, in the school systems, we've got organizations like the NEA and others. We've got administrators and school boards who are complicit in refusing to acknowledge the fact that, I mean, in this example, in the state of Alaska, that we have a declining enrollment, that it is projected to continue. And instead of making a plan to deal with that and to acknowledge it and to accept that fact that the enrollment is going to continue to get smaller and try and pull in the horns and batten down the hatches and make things as efficient as possible, they want to continue the status quo. They don't want to close school. I mean, and on top of that, you've got the inflationary measure. You've got the inflationary pressure of where $1 today is not what it was, 15, 20, 30, 50 years ago, 10 years ago. It's not the same, the dollar doesn't go as far. And by ignoring the fact that, the simple logic and the simple truth that you're going to have fewer students and just stamping your foot and saying, we need to get what we've always got, or we need more than we've always got because things are costing more, it doesn't acknowledge the truth that there's just not enough money to go around. And as we become more and more dependent on the government for everything, we continue to look for them. And as they start to reach the end of the rope where there is no more blood in the stone, the center cannot hold, folks. Things will start to bust apart. And we here in the state really need to acknowledge that. We really need to acknowledge that we've got to stop looking to Uncle Sam to bail us out at every opportunity or to create. Again, a lot of these programs that I've talked about this morning, these are, some of these are good, not the renewable energy ones, but these are great programs, especially the literacy, the adult, the job training. Those are all great programs. Why isn't industry stepping up to help fund those things? If they want the next generation of good workers, why aren't they stepping up to help fund that? Private donations, churches. I mean, why are we not looking at that? Why is it always Uncle Sam that has to bail us out of these things? At what point did we abdicate our own responsibility as community members to to give back to the community? I mean, I could tell you that as a business owner here at the radio station, I have given away tens of thousands of dollars worth of advertising and things like that because I believed in community things because I want to support it. We have donated in-kind things and in just the last 7 months because that's what we do as a community. Why aren't we looking outside of what has become the ultimate solution of, well, the government should handle that? No, we, neighbors, community members, we should handle those things. Those are the things that we need to take the bull by the horns on and get it. And then this idea, again, this lawsuit, this just frosts my cookies, okay? Because you're taking public dollars to then wage a legal war against the government who is using public dollars to then turn around and get more public dollars. If that's not a self-licking ice cream cone, I don't know what is. I mean, and the Fairbanks School Board has put away, was it, again, I can't remember the number, if it was $125,000 or $250,000. They put hundreds of thousands of dollars into the kitty to fight this battle. Wait, I thought you guys said you how can you even afford that at this point? It's insane. Absolute insanity. All right, we got to go. The Michael Dukes Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll be back with more right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Dukes Show.
Okay, I need to try and call my guest to figure out where they're at. So we'll continue here for just a second. I'm going to put you on hold. We'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. Don't eat all my donuts. Okay. Well, I'm a little worried about Allison. Her phone goes straight to voicemail this morning. Hopefully she's okay. Okay. Let's get back to your guys' comments here in the chat room. The Fairbanks North Scarborough School District is flush with money and still spends funds on nice things to have, above and beyond on the mandate in the Constitution. I mean, again, that's part of government. That's part of government's big failing, is that they have confused the must-haves with the nice-to-haves. That's the issue. Yeah, Chris says the irony of the government suing the government. Yeah, I know. Exactly, right? Not federal soup, it's cheese. Okay. I mean, soup, cheese, you knew what I meant. Skeets says cut through the bone. Not don't cut to the bone, cut through the bone. Make the UA adults go get a private sector job and money is there for the kids. Again, how much administration do we have in a lot of these areas that could be, changed out here? Becoming, I think Brian was saying he's like becoming ? I think he was saying we're becoming a dependency state. Yeah, no, I mean, we're there. We are, you're right. I shouldn't have said becoming. We are there. We are there. For sure. Lisa said, my mother-in-law was one of the first peony growers in Alaska. She went to New Zealand to learn all about them. She sold her farm a while ago. Oh, that's cool. That's some nice history there. I really wanted to talk a little bit about all the, to talk about the peony. So hopefully Allison comes in this morning. I'm kind of losing hope at this point. I think maybe something come up and she's busy. I hope she's okay. Patty says it's not the teachers in these schools. Teachers only teach to the selected curriculum. Curriculum is selected by school board member. And again, Patty, I hope I'm clear here. I'm not blaming the teachers. This is a leadership problem. This is a leadership problem. You're right. Curriculum, funding, priorities, administrative overhead. Those are all functions of, these are not classroom teacher problems. These are leadership problems. So, it's part of the problem. Lisa also said Nikolaevsk School is working on a hybrid charter school. We got our application out of intent. We got our application of intent in before August 1st. We had our weekly meeting yesterday evening and also have soccer. We have so many kids that will benefit. Lisa, I really hope that you guys are successful in getting your charter school put together. Absolutely. Representative Alexi Moore says one of the top issues within the educational system currently, the lack of parental involvement when it comes to outcomes. And that's what we were talking about earlier, that there is a huge component of parental involvement that has to be there. My question is, how do we mandate that? How do we fix that? To me, that's the biggest question. How do we fix that lack of a parental involvement? I mean, I wish I had the perfect answer, which maybe I do.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Yeah. So Alexi Moore is in the chat room, Representative Alexi Moore from the Mat-Su. And she made a comment and said, one of the top issues within the educational system currently is the lack of, when it comes to outcomes, is the lack of parental involvement. And we addressed that earlier on in the last hour to say, when it comes to education, what is, what's the hubbub, bub? What's the problem? Well, again, I would argue that the problem starts with leadership, starts with the unwillingness to acknowledge that part of their problem is out migration and declining enrollment. And yes, that parental involvement is a huge component of it as well. Because there is a slice of the population out there, a slice of the parents out there who are treating the education system not as the mechanism for educating their children and giving them, but they're treating it more as if, again, it's a glorified babysitter. Now, the question is, and this is the hard question. Some of these questions are easy to answer. The leadership, the planning, the building, the shifting administration versus teaching staff. I mean, some of those things are pretty obvious and pretty easy to see, right? But how do we get parental involvement into the school? That's a hard question. Now, again, if you've listened to this program for longer than 5 minutes, you know that I'm not a fan of governmental mandates, right? I don't want the government. I don't want there to be a, parent truancy officer or something where they have to come in and say, you're not being involved in your kid's education enough. I'm not looking for that. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, for me, the answer was because I was so dissatisfied with what I had gone through in the school system because we had our first child at 21, right? So we had our first child. I was 21 years old. And so I'm pretty fresh out of the school system at 21 years old. So we were making decisions and making plans for when our kid hit 5 years old for what we were going to do. And I was pretty fresh out of school. I had only been out of school for 4 or 5 years at that point. And so I made the decision at that time to have the ultimate parental involvement. The ultimate parental involvement is homeschooling. I had met several people who were homeschooled, or who were homeschooling their kids rather, had talked to them about it, picked their brain, had gone through some of the things. And I realized, this is going to be some work, but it's going to be worth it in the end. And it literally is the ultimate parental involvement. Now, you can't mandate that somebody homeschool their kids. You can't mandate that somebody send their kids to, for example, a charter school. I mean, all these alternative schooling methods, you know what the one thing that they have in common is? Parental involvement. That's what all those things are based on, parental involvement. Homeschooling being the ultimate expression because you're essentially one-on-one and taking complete and total responsibility for your kids' education. And then you've got, like Montessori schools or, teacher share programs where you're the one that's doing all the work to put the system together. And then you've got charter schools where there's mandated parental involvement in meetings and management. That's all, and then but every step of the way, every one of those different mechanisms all require a tremendous amount of effort on the parts of the parents. Whereas the brick and mortar schools, it is easy to just say, drop the kid off and we'll pick them up later. Or in fact, we don't even have to drop them off and pick them up. The school will pick them up and drop them off for us, and we can go about our day and do what we need to do. So I don't know how to encourage that kind of interest or behavior. Now, Anthony just had an interesting idea. He said, I'm looking for the bottom of my comments here. He said, it's easy. You base a family's total tax deductions available based off the average GPA per child. Oh boy. Maybe they'd take an interest, but if you've only got, what is it? Something like 40% of Americans don't even pay taxes. Is it something like that? It's below 50%, but it's somewhere in that 40 to 50% range. They don't even pay taxes. So why should they care what their tax deductions are? That's the thing. It's it's frustrating to watch. But what's even more frustrating is at the federal level. Yeah, at the federal level, yes. At the federal level, it's like 40, somewhere between 40 and 50% don't even pay taxes at the federal level. Now they may pay taxes locally but there is no state income tax. So I don't know how, I don't know how you get there from here. And I think what this comes back to is more of it's a cultural problem. And maybe we could take this back all the way back to the destruction of the nuclear family. Right? Maybe we can go all the way back to there and say, this is part of the problem. This is how we are not paying attention or caring about it anymore. Because again, there's the lack of kind of the family values, or the destruction of the nuclear family caused it to where it's a single parent household and they have to work so hard just to keep the lights on that they can't spare a moment. There's a lot of issues going on here. But I think more than anything, it's a cultural problem. And again, I don't have a perfect solution for this. I don't have a perfect answer on how to fix this. Anthony said, challenge accepted. If you have kids and don't pay taxes, you start having to pay taxes based off the GPA per child. He's going to find a solution for you. He's going to find a solution for you. You're either, even if you don't pay, now you're going to have to pay because your child is flunking math. You have to pay taxes. it probably would motivate. It would probably. It's a unique idea. Anyway, it's frustrating to watch. Frank just said MD's Michael Dukes' public indoctrination did not last long. Is that also a failure of the system? That's the thing. I was inoculated against the indoctrination of the public school systems. I was lucky. I was raised in a household and outside my household. I had my mom and my dad, obviously, but my grandfather was a huge influence on me. My grandfather was a very conservative guy who had he later on in his life that's where I first read some of my first John Birch material was when I was a teenager. My grandfather had some John Birch material that he had and some other things, and it really kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things. So luckily I was inoculated against the kind of that indoctrination. In fact, I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. I remember that there was a social studies class, and I could still see the teacher's face, although I can't remember her name right now. But I remember that at the beginning of the school year, and it was a junior or a senior level social studies class. And at the beginning of the term, she gave a quiz. It was like a pop quiz to a test to all the students. Now, I didn't realize till about 2 or 3 years later that it was basically it was a political grid test, right? Where you answer questions and it kind of pinpoints you on where on the grid. Are you more conservative? Are you more liberal? Are you more Republican or Democratic or libertarian or what it is? And I didn't realize at the time that that's what it was all about, right? That this teacher was taking the measure of every student to see where they were at. Now, I will not ascribe malfeasance or malice aforethought to her, although I will say that she really seemed to hate me later on. And I'm a pretty jovial type person. I wasn't necessarily loved by all the teachers, but I was, always treated fairly. But this gal really seemed to hate me. And it was after that test. I mean, you don't even know me yet, right? And it turns out that I was told by another teacher several years later that test, that she gave that test, and that I apparently was a topic of conversation because they taught the same type of courses, because I had maxed out that test on the conservative side of the fence, only to be surpassed 2 years later by my little brother. Apparently he got one more or whatever. So I had luckily been inoculated against all that stuff, because even then I understood that and you know what? I don't want to forget one of my greatest teachers on this, not only my parents, not only my grandfather, but Mr. Louis L'Amour. Mr. Louis L'Amour was foundational in shaping me as a human being. That is, that may sound weird. But that was a huge, huge part of what makes me what I am today. Kind of that thought process there. Randy says, Michael, what was something that you did not like in school while you were attending Fairbanks Public Schools? I guess I would say that one of the things that I found the most frustrating, and it's one of the reasons why I almost flunked out of math in my senior year. And it had to do with the fact that I was first of all, I wasn't that interested in math. And second of all, when I did do it, it just seemed like things were so slow. It was like the fact that in schools, they have to teach to the speed of the slowest student in the classroom, that they can't leave anybody behind. They have to teach at the speed of the slowest learner, was frustrating to me because I picked things up pretty quick. And so what happened was, it wasn't a failure of I didn't have almost nearly a failure in math because I didn't understand the math. It's because I was so bored waiting for the teacher to get some of these other kids up to speed. That was the things that was what I did not like in high school. That was in high school. That's probably the biggest takeaway that I had in high school. Everything else was a lot of fun and very interesting, and learned a lot. Yeah. Patrick F. McManus, also a big influence on me as well, Frank. I used Patrick F. McManus's books for my drama and extemporaneous and debate club all the time. Good stuff. I actually interviewed him before he died. God, that was 20 years ago. That was interesting. All right, we got to go here. One final segment. Doesn't look like Allison's going to be joining us today in the next segment, so I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet. I'm sure we'll figure something out. There'd be plenty of things that we can talk about, right? Maybe I'll take a poll in the chat room. What do people want me to discuss and rant about? All right, we'll be back. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, you guys are already sounding off. Debbie says she wants to talk about good news. Good news. Frank says, summertime recipes? ? Summertime recipes. You know, my wife makes it's her grandmother's recipe. It is a marinade of chicken for on the grill, like chicken on the grill. And it is, anyway, it's vinegar. It's a vinegary marinade for chicken. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, it was just so good. Brian also said that Patrick F. McManus was a staple in their household with the kids. I still remember the story. I used to perform for the drama. We'd have competitions, in the schools, inter-school competitions. And I won a couple times doing the story about climbing up into the tree and beating a rock into your chest to lock your eyes open so you didn't fall out of the tree. There's so much. Patrick McManus is just such a genius, such a good writer, and one of those things that just made me laugh out loud all the time, absolutely all the time. I'm going back through the comments here to see what else we've got going on. Bear attack in Anchorage yesterday. It's almost like we're in Alaska and this place will kill you, right? I mean, it's just shocking, I tell you. Tracer said over on Rumble, and then there was the theory that the schools should get on the kudos for involvement grading system, which doesn't recognize academic failure when the student normally would have flunked. Yeah, I mean, when everybody gets a participation award, and we can't flunk that student because that would just be wrong and damage them. Or no, I mean, let's look deeper onto what the problem actually is, right? Let's look deeper as to what the problem actually is. Who would blame what business would blame the customers? Only the K-12 system would blame parents for not teaching kids how to read. I'm going to disagree with that, David. I think it's the parents' responsibility to at least teach their kids the basics of reading. I mean, I tried to instill in my kids the love of reading, because I love to read. Now, in the last 15 or 20 years, I've gone from reading to listening because it's easier and more enjoyable for me. But man, when I was a kid, I remember my mom used to say, "You better not finish that book. I'm not going to buy you another one for another week," because I was eating books like it was, candy. I mean, she wasn't mean about it. She's just like, "I can't go down and buy you another paperback book because you finished this one." But I loved to read. I still love to read. That's what I wanted to instill in my kids. Okay. I'm thinking biscuits and gravy and 2 or 3 eggs, says Rick. You guys are making me hungry. You know you're not supposed to do that, right? All right. What are we talking about, guys? What should I talk about in the next segment? I have nothing planned. Let's see. What's on my good news reading list here? Well, that's not good news. NASA's Webb scratches beyond the surface of Cat's Paw Nebula. Arizona governor empowers charity to cancel out $129 billion for $10 million. Snake and spider. I'm sorry, I'm just looking through the good news list here. Restored. Oh, there's a good piece right here. We'll do that one right there. Okay, I got to read this story too, and we're gonna be doing these live because I haven't read the stories. I'm just looking at the headlines. Oh man. Sorry that I just got a chuckle out of one of these stories that I didn't read you the headlines on. Okay, so I've got some stories here. We'll I guess we'll try and fold in some good news because none of the rest of you are the thing. All right. I did both, Randy. I checked out a lot of books from the library, and I bought a lot of books. Both. Yeah. All right. We will let's get with the program. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Welcome back to the program. One final segment of the show for this morning. The Homer Peony celebration. I guess let me just tell you about the real quick because I really wanted to highlight this, and unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to talk to Allison Gaylord this morning. First and foremost, before I jump in some of the good news stories, because there are not really a lot of choices, but one was we'd like to talk about good news, because now and then we share good news, right? That's the big deal, is we like to share. It's not all about bad news. It's not everything else. In July, Homer, Alaska comes alive with beautiful and fragrant peonies during the annual Homer Peony celebration. Dubbed the City of Peonies, Homer boasts 25 flourishing peony farms, each radiating with unforgettable scents and sights. The extended summer days, combined with the chill of glacier-fed breezes and fertile soils, creates a perfect environment for these flowers to bloom more vividly. In fact, In fact, Alaska has become the peony capital of the world. I mean, we put out more peonies than any place else on Earth. To celebrate this, there's peony themed art exhibits, products, and special events. Peonies are the number one flower brides prefer and the second most popular flower worldwide. Peonies are unavailable anywhere else. Alaska peonies are shipped worldwide, and they're highly sought in the lower 48. There are guided tours of botanical gardens at the Pratt Museum, Diamond Ridge peonies, Scenic Place peonies, the Alaska Perfect peony. There's also art shows that are going on. They've got the fresh cut peony bouquets. Every week, the Alaska Beauty Peony Co-op does what they call a bouquet bar down at their packing plant on Lakeshore Drive, where you can come in and you can spend, I think it was 20, there's 3 levels, like 20, 30, or $40, and you can get a handful of stems, half a dozen, whatever, all the way up to a full dozen bouquet, and you build your own vase, you build your own thing, and they provide everything, and then you walk away, and you can go back every 2 weeks and refresh your flowers all throughout the summer. The bouquet bar every Friday night down there. They've got the family fun day. They've got story time at the Pratt Museum as well. They've got the peony pop-up at Grace Ridge. They've got a wreath thing. They've got painting peony planters, and the paper peonies and tea time. They've got a high tea going on as well. And they actually make peony soaps and, what did I get Terry the other day? Peony bath salts. And it all smells so amazing. And my wife, she did the bouquet bar on the 11th, the first night that they did the bouquet bar. And I kid you not, the peony went from the size of a golf ball, because when they first give them to her, her bouquet was essentially closed peonies. And within 2 days, one of them was the size of a saucer. It was like 6.5 inches across. It was they're just beautiful. Amazing. Anyway, peonies, Homer. Come down and enjoy it. It's a beautiful time to come down and enjoy some peonies. It's great. It's some crazy stuff going on. Okay. I got a couple of stories from the good news bin. And there's some good ones in here. There's some good ones. And because I didn't get a chance to preview them and give you my stories, I'm just going to read through them because they're fun. And we need a little bit of good news after I just ranted your ear off for 2 hours. I'll give you a little good news. Before we get to that, tomorrow on the program, we've got Chris Story in hour 1 to talk about the fair tax. And he's going to be with us in all of hour 1 to talk about the fair tax and the process and how things are going with that. In hour 2, David Ignell from MustRead Alaska is going to be joining us to talk about the grand juries and this incident down in Ketchikan, where the Ketchikan police chief was forced out by the Attorney General, Treg Taylor, through a guy who was just trying to defend his wife. And anyway, we'll get the full story tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Then on Friday, Professor David Yamane is going to be joining us. He's the author of the book Gun Curious. He's going to be talking with us on Firearms Friday. So that's the rest of the week. But let's hit a couple big headlines. First one, 11 years of cancer research has proven fruitful for a scientist at Johns Hopkins who uncovered a new tumor suppressive response that could lead to novel therapies targeting hard-to-treat cancers. The new study, funded by the NIH and the National Cancer Institute, showed that targeting a key process of how cells make protein can inhibit cancer cells. And that makes them more sensitive to death and everything else. The findings published in the Cell Chemical Biology open the door to potential new treatments for cancers with common generic mutations. They found that using a drug to inhibit the enzyme responsible for human RNA, called RNA polymerase 1 or POL1, triggered a unique stress response that rewires splicing, or the way cancer cells produce forms of protein, to ultimately suppress the tumor growth. The latest study, the team analyzed more than 300 cancer cell lines and found that tumors with certain mutations were especially sensitive to the POL1 inhibitors. And the team tested the new drug in animal models and the patient-derived tumors containing the same key genetic markers and recorded a significantly reduced tumor growth by up to 77% in melanoma and colorectal cancers. So it's some good news. They're finding ways. He said according to the study's author, these findings highlight a promising new path for targeting cancers, especially for patients with mismatch repair deficient cancers that are resistant to existing therapies. So we haven't found the cure yet, but we're working our way there. This headline caught my eye, though. This caught my eye. Kids these days, right? They spend too much time playing video games and are not a tough time outside. Tell that to grandmother Michelle Statham, and you'll expect her to agree with you. But in reality, her response will probably be something like, "Which video game are they playing?" She lives in Washington State. She's a 60-year-old known to many as the tactical grandma, which is what she uses while she's playing her favorite video game, Call of Duty. She doesn't let it get into the way that Call of Duty is primarily for young men. She says she enjoys sniping and virtual soldiers controlled by those young men from a long range. She goes, it's pretty fun. She's just one of an estimated 57 million Americans over the age of 50 who play video games. Although when one considers the video gaming took off in earnest during the 80s, it adds up to many of those who played the original Mario Brothers will still be playing Super Mario Odyssey all these years later. Recent data from the Entertainment Software Association shows that nearly half of Americans in their 60s and 70s play some form of PC, mobile, or console video game every week, as do 36% of people in their 80s. And it helps. It keeps the brain fresh. It keeps things going. It keeps your hand-eye coordination going. In many cases, there are positive outcomes associated, particularly with social interactions, memorization, required reaction speed, and co-op activities. Anyway, it's interesting. I only do this because I'm a 55-year-old gamer. That's why I bring that up, because I do play video games once a week on the weekends. I got my time lined out so that I can't, but I do love it. Say she's the tactical grandma. I should be the tactical grandpa. That's what I'll be. I'll be the match to that. We'll make it happen. Anyway, some good news. Just fun stuff right there. We gotta go. We'll see you guys tomorrow with Chris Story, 6 a.m. All right. Well, my friends, that brings us to a close. Tactical grandma. That's what I love. That's it. Yeah, if grandma is hanging around in Call of Duty lobbies, I bet she's not going to blush away from an argument. Yeah. It's fun stuff. Joel says, I may or may not be playing a light game of RimWorld. I'm not familiar with that one. But I am playing a whole lot of Star Citizen. Although I did dip back into Tom Clancy's The Division 2 here recently. Got to give myself a little, got to give myself a little bit of a break every now and then. All right, guys, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on board. We will see you guys tomorrow. Be kind, love one another, live well. The Michael Duke Show.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
Welcome.
Don't eat all my donut. Okay.